Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Harris. I am a software engineer at Moo. Hopefully you've heard of us. One of the things we make is business cards. If you come and find me afterwards, I will give you one of my business cards for free. Today I'm going to talk to you about people, processes, and ADRs. Now, what on earth are ADRs? Anyone here ever been confused by a sort of three-letter acronym? Well, I certainly have. A couple of years ago, my boss Marta joined Moo, and she was very fond of using the phrase FTW, which according to Marta and apparently everyone else in tech means for the win, which is a very positive phrase. And she'd use it in blog posts, for example, saying, the project that's been delayed 6 months has finally been delivered. For the win, go team. Now, in my head, I thought FTW meant something else. And I thought FTW meant F expletive the world. And this is a very negative thing. So when I read this blog post, I read, the project that's been delayed for 6 months has finally been delivered. F the world. And I thought this was a sort of very brave new management style. Anyway, it kind of shows that there's often a lot of confusion away from the coding we do. And I'm going to explain to you what an ADR is in a little bit. The rest of the talk is going to be a bit about how Moo's changed over the years and our relationship with React, and some of the processes that we put into place to try and get the best out of the tech team. But just to set the scene, I want to take you back to 2013. Now, what was the major event back in 2013? Yay, someone said it at the front. Yeah, React was released to the public. I'm sure it was incubating away in Facebook for a while before that. But 2013 was released to the public. That's only 4 years ago. It definitely feels like much longer. I'm sure I got a recruiter's email requiring 6 years' worth of React experience just the other day. I'm going to take you forward to 2014. September 2014 and the React meetup. So hands up, anyone who thinks they might have been at the React meetup in September 2014. Yep, the front row. Excellent. Well, we can probably double check, because this is a really blurry screenshot of the React meetup back in September 2014, so you can probably spot yourself there. Why is this important? Well, at this React meetup, this is when Moo did their first talk. This is an embarrassing picture of Brad, who was our senior architect at the time. And he came to do a talk 3 years ago. So, 2014, not very long ago, what do you think was the hot topic back in 2014? Maybe it was about the latest React version. Maybe it was about atomic design. Maybe you heard a very similar sort of set of talks today. Well, Brad's talk back in 2014 was migrating from Flash migrating from Flash to React. Big shout out if you're still using Flash. Cool, I'll go back to Brad and tell him that was the most successful meetup talk of all time. Cool, so what's happened from 2013, 2014 through to 2017 where we are today? So React's gone from version 3, which is the first public version, obviously. We've gone to React 16. We had a great talk earlier about some of the features in React 16. We're not using it yet, but we will do. The React meetup's gone from this to, that's a mirror. Probably doesn't work as well if you're watching this online. But what's happened at Moo? So back in 2014, that's when we first introduced React into our technical stack. From there, we've gone from 30 developers to 85 developers. Whee. But there's a lot of changes and challenges with growing a team from 30 to 85. We had a new CTO, so Mary Williams, some of you might have heard her, she's pretty big in the tech world, joined us about a year ago, and she's brought a whole new bunch of processes and ways of thinking about and dealing with tech. And we've gone from one team using React through to about 5+ teams using React. If you haven't used the Moo website, we've got a whole bunch of different sections. It's not a single-page app. We've got a bunch of single-page apps joined together for building your business cards, for the checkout. We've got a separate business site as well, and we're using little bits of React components elsewhere. There's lots of other changes, but they're kind of the 3 key changes that are important for this meetup. There's one other big project change that's happened over the last 2 years. We introduced a new design system. So our website kind of looked great before, and it worked, but it wasn't responsive, it wasn't consistent all the way through, and we wanted to spruce it all up a little bit. So we actually did atomic design, so we read Brad Frost's papers and stuff. We did atomic design and did a full sort of website redesign. We worked with our designers there. We've got shared sketch files and a shared style guide. And why am I talking about this? Well, that wasn't part of the React stuff at the start. That was definitely about sharing styles and sort of shared styles library. But it's provided the basis for a lot of the processes that we, as the front-end team, look at and work with. And it's also sort of sparked the ideas of having shared styles to move on to sharing React components. Cool. Well, people's the first part of the talk. FTW. You can use whichever of the two definitions you want for that. Anyone kind of come across this when you've been out about in the tech world? People are hard, coding is easy, the end. I think we've all had days like that where the code kind of works, but the people we're working with, it's kind of tough. I kind of agree with the statement a little bit. People are definitely hard, but coding is also hard. We just spend an awful lot more time trying to get better at coding. There's probably good reasons for that. It's probably part of your job. It's maybe something you enjoy much more. But the coding often seems easier because you've put a lot more time and effort into it. So when we look back and we see that Moo's grown from 30 to 85 developers, there's a lot more dealing with other people. And as a developer and as a company, you have to invest more in trying to work out how you deal with those people. So Moo does a great job of trying to provide us with other tools and infrastructure and people to help us with that. But there's also a responsibility on the individual and the team leaders. So whichever company you're at, maybe they don't buy into that ethos. There's still a lot of things and research that you can look at and do. That's a whole completely different topic. So that's kind of this is a really good thing to do. Go off and research on the internet. Go and follow Mary on Twitter, and you'll find lots of information there. But this is a React meetup, so the next point is more React-based. People aren't React components. Wouldn't it be great if they were and you just sent them a bit of state and they just like did this thing on the other side? That'd be fantastic. But people aren't. You have to deal with them a little bit differently. And the next one, I sent out this tweet that's going to come up in a second on Twitter, and I thought it was hilariously funny, and no one else liked it at all. But I get to talk now, and I'm going to inflict it on you. So why Redux is a great design pattern for your app, but a terrible one for organizing your tech team. I think Redux is great. That it's got a lot of state well away from everything else. But I think your tech team really wants to have a voice and a way of getting their ideas across. There's maybe some similarities, and when I've thought about it a bit too much, maybe it is a bit closer. But moving on to the next stage, processes. For the win, F the world, whichever one you think of that. We all have good and bad processes in what we do. Just going to talk about a few of the processes at Moo. There's a long list of things here. We've got tribes, crews, quads, agile coaches. In the last few years, that's because the whole tech team's grown. If you go online and Google Jane Austen, she's done a load of talks recently that talk all about those changes. The two things I'm going to talk about, going to come up in a second, are more focused on the React and the React components we've been building. The first of all is we've used some of our expertise that we use to build awesome-looking websites and finding solutions for our customers. We've been using those tools and those experts to help understand and deliver the tooling that we do internally. So we've got a great bunch of user experience designers and researchers, and they're usually out talking to our customers. So we want a new checkout, they go and talk to our customers and work out what their pain points are and go and quiz them and really sort of drive the discussion. We've been trying to build shared style guides and documentation internally, and instead of just a bunch of tech people in a room trying to build something, we've got our user researchers in, and we've done the same as we do for our external users. We've asked them questions, we've made sure we've got the right spec, we try and solve our points. As tech people, we think we like to know everything, but we may not be good at that people thing we talked about before. Getting people who are very good at people into the room to drive the discussion has been really useful. Now, talk about shared style guides here. We've also done that for some really technical stuff at Moo. So we're getting new dev environments. We just moved to AWS recently, and Georgia, one of our user researchers, came in and drove a discussion about Linux distributions and containers and Kubernetes, and it was awesome. Second thing I'm going to talk about is guilds. So we use guilds to discuss and share methods across crews with a similar discipline. This is something that Mary introduced a year ago, and we have sort of 10 different crews at Moo, and I'm specifically going to talk about the front-end guild, and that is all the different crews that are using React and using different styles. And we come together and share ideas and talk about the latest Webpack tooling, or talk about React 16, or talk about how we're going to talk about atomic design and how that fits into our React components. We've got a quick picture here of Jamie leading one of the discussions, one of the chats. We've got a very miserable-looking bunch of people at one of the front-end guilds. It's usually a lot happier than this. One of the problems we found with the front-end guild was that we were in there and we were sharing ideas, And a lot of us could take these ideas back to the teams, and there were little things that we could implement into our day-to-day work. But we had a lot of bigger structural architecture changes we wanted to get into place. And the main one that's relevant here is that we wanted to get a shared React component library. We had a bunch of shared styles. We wanted a shared React component library that everybody could use. But there didn't seem to be a way for the guild of getting that sort of project out and into sort of the tech backlog and a buy-in from product. So we talked to the tech leadership, and they wanted to find a solution for this. So they've introduced ADRs, WTF. I'm going to explain that in a second. ADRs are architectural design records. And I've just copied the next 3 points from the blog that went out, sort of introducing these at Moo. The first one is that ADRs are to think carefully about why we're making a decision. The second one is to understand the consequences of our choices. And the third one is to retrospectively understand why a decision was made. So we have company-wide ADRs. They live in a Git repo. There's a load of markdown files in there. And whenever you want to do a big technical change, everyone always makes big technical changes. I'm sure you've got documentation sitting around in old wikis or Google Docs. This is a central place for that documentation. There's a structure to the ADRs about how to lay out what you're trying to deliver and the sort of technical challenges you're doing. So, for example, we want to do a shared React component library. This means that in the future, more teams will be able to go from zero to building an app quicker. We'll get lots of things like accessibility for free across different crews and various other benefits. So we lay out there what we're doing. This allows the tech leadership to sort of understand what our vision is and then decide if this is a good idea, hopefully it is, or a bad idea, and also balance that up against what do we need? Do we need more time? Is it money we need? Do we need to provision AWS nodes with Node on them for server-side rendering or something like that? And then once we've made the decision, we've got a really clear record of exactly what's happened. And this is great because we often have tech decision or tech arguments, tech decisions, tech discussions, where you'll have the discussion 1 week, and then a few weeks later you'll have the same argument. This means that there's a record that you can point people to, especially good for people who are joining the crew or joining the team. New people can come and see a record of what you've decided. And also, we all have terrible memories. We've all made technical decisions, and 2 years later, completely forgotten why. So just some brief examples of this. So a company-wide example might be why we're migrating from Flash to React. This is in the old days before ADRs happened. Flash is actually really good, brilliant for actually designing business cards in the web. So actually, Flash would have been great if Steve Jobs hadn't killed it. And then another one, shared React components across crews. This is another ADR that we're sort of writing up and making sure that we've got buy-in from the leadership. But we don't just do ADRs at a big company-wide level. We have them at the project level. And again, if we're making sort of big discussions or decisions at the project level, there's a section markup there that we try and show why we've made these decisions. Again, I'm sure you've all worked on projects where stuff has been set up. You're not quite sure why this was chosen over that. Yeah, you think the person who chose it had no idea that this other framework existed. This gives us an area to make sure we know what the decision was. And often maybe it was a really close call. So a lot of the decisions we made, we've been sort of 50-50 in the front-end guild discussing what we want to implement. So something like the build tools will set up, which linting to do, multiple versus single repos. So we're setting up React components. We originally decided that we wanted them all in their own individual repo. Absolute nightmare. We changed our minds and went back. So these ADRs, just because they're written down, don't mean you can't change them. This is maybe a slightly controversial one, so I think there's been loads of talk about using CSS in JavaScript and in components, and even from the other talks, it sounds like lots of people are doing this. We've got really good CSS framework, and we don't really have much problem with that, but we read all these talks, and we're like, yeah, great, we're going to use CSS in our React components, and it was an absolute disaster, and we've gone right back to using CSS back like the old days. We will probably change our minds sometime, but we've got a nice ADR. We wrote up what went wrong, what our issues were, and it means we can come back to it in the future and understand how we can solve those problems. Now, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone at Moo who's been involved with changing things over the last few years, and we've been growing. There's always pain points along the way, and I get to come to a nice talk and tell you all the good stuff, but everyone's been awesome, especially the people involved in the front-end guild and with the React projects. Just a quick summary of what we talked about. Everything changes. The React meetup's gone from that little room in Old Street or wherever it was, to this big, awesome Facebook thing, and I'm sure in 3 years' time it'll be taking over the world somewhere. If you want to deal with that change, I think the biggest thing is investing in people. I think it's really important what we do at Moo. I think Red Badger does a pretty good at looking after people, at least from people I know there. There's a smile going on there. I think that's really important. The processes side, these are a few things that work for Moo. They might not work if you're a 4-person startup. They probably don't work if you're a Facebook. But have a little think and think about what you're doing. React is awesome. For the win, definitely. Thank you very much. Cool. Was there any questions? Great.
Can't see any. Any questions for Mike? I've got a question.
You've got a question.
What does an ADR look? I think they're great.
Yeah.
Really useful little documents. What do they look like, briefly?
So for us, we've got them in a Git repo, so they're marked down. We've got set sections, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's certain pieces where we try and write down, especially in the company-wide ones, and it's meant to be very clear so that the tech leadership can go in and work out what the decision was, what they need to sort of back it up with. It's a load of markdown, so it probably depends on how good you are at pushing space at the end of a sentence. It's fairly new to Mo at the moment, so I'm sure it's going to change over the next weeks or months. Have you got an example of how yours look like?
No, I think just the ones we've used are very short, only like 30 or 40 lines of text. And I think it's quite a nice idea that every repo has like a /ADRs directory or something in it.
Yeah.
Just for the project-specific tech decisions. When you're incurring tech debt, here's a record of why we're incurring that.
Exactly. And there's often good reasons. So we come across some stuff, what felt like a terrible decision, but we found some documentation, luckily somewhere hidden on the wiki, and it made a lot of sense why that decision was made at the time. And you understand you can actually maybe break it because it wasn't relevant now. Yeah, we had the situation, you've got Google Docs stashed somewhere, you've got a wiki somewhere, someone else has saved things on a hard drive, and having an ADR in the repo is fantastic.